Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We've got some NBA news to dive into today involving some fairly high-profile names. We're talking John Wall and Aaron Gordon. But first, Keith, did you see the Hawkeye trailer? Oh my gosh. I meant to talk about it on yesterday's show, and somehow it slipped my mind. It's Die Hard with a bow and arrow. I love it. Sign me up.
I love it. I love the tag that the best gifts come with a bow.
Oh,
I
so
think
great.
that is phenomenal marketing. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm psyched to see this one, just like it was all the rest. And so we'll get the Eternals a couple weeks ahead of that, and then the Hawkeye on Thanksgiving Eve, and that's a nice night to get it because we generally won't have NBA games the next day,
Yep.
so we'll be able to watch Hawkeye probably while the turkey's cooking and enjoy just a nice day of Marvel and then some football, food, and family and all that good stuff.
Gonna be a good time. Now, I will say this, and I promise we will get to our NBA basketball stuff. But so Jeremy Renner plays Hawkeye, and my daughter, a year or so ago, she was 4, maybe she was still 3 at the time, but she was pronouncing Hawkeye as hot guy, like HOT
Nice.
guy, and my wife did not correct her. I don't know how to feel about that right now,
Oh
but
man,
in any event, I'm sure that she'll watch
might not
that
be on in
Marvel
the,
series
the
with me, I
Lane
guess.
household.
Yeah.
That
And-
is amazing. I love it.
but anyway, this is that's an exciting thing that's going to be coming up. Sorry, we had to geek out a little bit over the Marvel stuff and the Hawkeye trailer, which was absolutely phenomenal. But there's some NBA news to break down. First, though, make sure you guys do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. If you're listening to the podcast version, make sure that you do follow us over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. We are growing this show, so please make sure that you do subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications as well. Keith, let's start things off with John Wall, a Houston Rocket for now,
Yeah.
but will not be a Houston Rocket into the future. It sounds like he is going to be traded
Well, the
at some.
Rockets hope.
The Rockets are hoping. They're hoping anyway. Let's
Yeah.
let's get into that. What's going to happen here? The Rockets, John Wall working together to try to find a trade, and he will not play any more games for Houston.
Yeah, so this is that working together part is where it's very different from the 76ers and Ben Simmons, who are not exactly working
No.
together. They're kind of working apart right now. So it sounds like by all accounts, John Wall has been very good in his time in Houston. He's been somebody that the younger players have really come to rely on for leadership. He's been a great leader for them. And the Rockets are looking at it and saying, look, we have a ton of guards that we want to play, young guards to Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Josh Christopher, just added in the last couple years, Kyrie Thomas, who they picked up on a late season edition last year, and he played quite well for them. So they want to play those guys. They don't necessarily want to play John Wall, nor do they want to have John Wall get hurt and kind of completely ruin maybe whatever little tiny modicum of trade value he may have left. There's no other way to slice this. It's 91.6 million that he is owed. It's bad money.
Yeah.
There's in I think John Wall would probably say the same thing. And good for John Wall for getting in when he did. And this is why you should never criticize a player for taking a max contract when it's offered to him. Team, other story we can have there. But
Mhm.
at the time this contract was offered, wasn't necessarily even seen as a bad contract. And either he's one of the first class of supermax guys to get it. So yeah, so what they're going to do is they're going to have him come to camp. He it sounds like he's going to be there to kind of almost be like a glorified assistant coach while they continue to try to work on trades. Finding a trade, that's where it's going to get
Right.
really difficult. Just because of that number, 44.3 million this year is what they've got to move. That is such a big number that is so hard to get moved at this point in the off season because roster spots have dried up and those kind of things. So could you find a trade? Of course. No contract is truly untradeable. There's already been a million people in my mentions on Twitter telling me all the trades that they think are great, more for their teams necessarily than the Houston
What? That is
Rockets.
shocking to
One
me.
thing it's stunning, right? That trades were one-sided, unbelievable. There should be a thing on every trade machine that says, "Is your trade one-sided?" Don't click submit then. And take another look. One last thing I'll say on this too, with this whole situation here with Wall is the Rockets are not going to give up assets to get off this contract. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. They're not trying to be a competitive team this season or maybe even next season. They know that they're rebuilding. That's why they were content to use four first round draft picks just this past
Mhm.
draft, because they're not trying to build this thing up very quickly. They want to be competitive, but they're not fooling themselves. They know they're not a playoff contender or anything like that. So they're not going to be giving up first round picks to get off this. Plus, it's quite frankly a little hard for them to trade first round picks because Oklahoma City already owns a handful of them.
Well, so does that just mean that I mean, it's hard to see a path to a trade where they don't have to give
Sure.
up something in order to move him. And you know, John Wall was not terrible. If you look at his numbers, 20-7 with poor percentages. That's basically what we thought he would be, right? A decent point guard who can put up points, but just doesn't do it very efficiently. And that's what we saw from him last season. But looking around the NBA, number one, what teams need a point guard right now?
Yep.
And number two, what teams have the assets to stack up to equal that 40 plus million that you have to get to in order to trade for John Wall? That is going to be a real challenge to find a taker for him, to the point where you got to wonder how do they eventually move him, especially if they're not willing to attach any type of asset to him in order to incentivize a team to take on that contract.
Exactly. And it's that first part. So let's eliminate the salary pieces of it.
Yeah,
Let's just say there was no
who needs a point
contracts
guard?
involved. Yeah, who needs a point guard? Really, nobody. At this point, the Clippers maybe ish.
Yeah,
Is Wall better than Reggie Jackson? I have my doubts at this point. Is he better than Eric Bledsoe? Yeah, probably, and probably get me there.
yeah.
But I, I mean, the rest of the league, nobody really jumps off the page as boy, they really need a point guard. The Celtics were there, but of course they signed Dennis Schroeder pretty late in the game, and they're not going to make a move like this, not after everything they did to try to get things done. I don't think it's going to be a big enough selling point of, hey, we have John Wall, Bradley Beal. You want to come here too? Oh, wait, we can't because we traded all those salaries to get John Wall. That's not going to happen. Philly, that's the one where maybe something could happen, some construction of a
There's your
three-team
Ben
trade.
Simmons trade, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know straight up,
No,
but
not straight up. I'm
if
kidding.
you wanted to get involved in a 3 or 4 team trade, and of course then
That's how it
everybody's
has to
gonna be
happen.
looking at Oklahoma City, right, as the kind of landing point for
Mhm.
or landing spot for a player, and that is the salaries get moved around, but maybe you could have something there. I think what it more likely would be for the Rockets is, hey, we'll take back your questionable money as well, and maybe we'll just do a trade that rebalances things for both sides. But again, right now, nobody screams out as really needing a point guard. Kind of funny, the team that maybe did um, of the contending group was the Denver Nuggets, just because we don't know
Mhm.
what Jamal Murray's status is going to be. But they did something else that we're going to talk about a little later in the show. And they're perfectly content to run out Monte Morris and Facundo Campazzo and just play that through until Murray gets back. And you run so much of the offense through Jokic anyway, you don't need a traditional point guard. So that's the tricky part in this whole thing. I'm just not sure how they're gonna find a deal for Wall at this point. And my guess is this stays pleasant and stays very everybody's on the same page. Let's just keep
Mhm.
working. Let's see what happens. And then at some point in February, when it's clear there's not going to be a trade, there'll be a Blake Griffin ish buyout that comes and happens down the line. I know he says no buyout now, but it's
Yeah.
the middle of September.
That's the other piece that I wanted to address here. They've said, hey, we're not going to buy him out. That's not what we intend to do or anything like that. Of course, they're saying that. What else are they going to say? Okay, we're going to do our best to trade him. And if we can't, then we're going to buy him out. Well, no team's going to give you anything for him. Well, you're probably not going to get anything for him anyway. But you're definitely not going to get a trade for him if everybody knows that he's going to be a free agent in a few months anyway. So they're going to do everything they can to trade him. If they can't, maybe then we go down that buyout path. And that's where I think you are going to see teams interested. And even if they bring him in as a backup point guard, because I think this is another one of those situations, kind of my pet peeve, where we have to be careful that we disconnect the player from the contract, that we don't look at the contract and say, oh, the contract is terrible, therefore the player is terrible. I think
Yeah.
John Wall can definitely help teams. At the dollar amount, that's the breaking point. If he was just a free agent and he could be had on a veteran minimum, a lot of teams would want John Wall. but that's
Sure.
not the case. It's the
Yeah.
contract that really complicates things here for his situation. So it'll be interesting to see how the Houston Rockets do handle this. It is a bit ironic. I mean, they go from Chris Paul to Russell Westbrook to now to John Wall, and here we are. But it is good to hear that is an amicable situation. This isn't John Wall demanding out. This is both sides came together and said, look, this is the reality of the situation. Let's work together and let's see what we can find. And so that's where now John Wall's agency, they can go around to teams around the NBA and they can openly talk like, hey, what can you guys offer?
Yep.
What can we create here? And they don't have to do anything secret behind closed doors because both sides are
Exactly.
on the same page. And I think that does help the process.
Yeah, for sure. Now, for the Rockets side, without John Wall playing, opens the path. Kevin Porter Jr., and much like he was after he got traded there, is going to be the starting point guard for the Houston Rockets going into next season. My guess is they might bring Jalen Green along a little slowly. Maybe Eric Gordon starts initially, but my guess is by the holidays, it's Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green are playing all the meaningful minutes in that Rockets backcourt. And then the vets like Gordon, DJ Augustin, David Nwaba, those guys are just going to be filling in here and there for those guys backup minutes. At this point, they're still trying to move Eric Gordon. We know that's been going on for months now. That's been rumored. So we'll see. But yeah, Kevin Porter Jr. He wasn't bad. It's
Mhm.
gonna be bumpy at times, like it was, but why not? You're not a good team. You might as well see if you can turn him into a point guard. Because if you can, you have an infinitely more valuable player than just an off-ball wing player, which Porter probably is never going to shoot it enough to give you a ton of value there. But as an on-ball guy, you might have something there. And I thought it looked okay last year, at least enough to continue the experiment into this season.
Does this change anything for Christian Wood? Do you think? Because he's kind of in that middle in no man's land, really,
Yeah.
where he's not really a veteran, but I don't know if he's a young piece for them moving forward. What happens with him? Does he just stay and they just try to continue to build, or do they maybe start looking at offers?
Yeah, my guess is they'll keep him for now, see how he fits. They added Daniel Tice this offseason too, which was a little weird, but I'm thinking they're gonna start Tyson Wood together up front
Hmm.
because both of them can step out and shoot it. Both of them can pass a little bit. And then probably Jayshawn Tate, who's done nothing to lose his starting spot. He's their best defensive wing player in on the team. And then up front, that leaves Kenny Martin Jr. and Alperen Schengen coming behind Tyson Wood. So my guess is they'll give it a shot and see. But if someone really comes in at the trade deadline and says, "Hey, we'll give you two firsts for Christian Wood
Yeah.
or a first and a young player or something like that," my guess is they'll probably be enticed to say, "All right, let's go." And he's got such a good contract that could easily be moved. It's not something that I think could is gonna keep them from moving him by any means because he's not making all that much money. So yeah, I don't think it changes necessarily a whole lot, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he's playing on another team by the trade deadline.
Yeah, agreed. I wouldn't be surprised at all either. The Rockets do have some interesting young pieces to build around, and that is what they're going to focus on here moving forward. John Wall will find a new home at some point, whether that's via the buyout market or if he is indeed traded. We'll have to wait and see how the Houston Rockets and John Wall wind up playing this, but it sounds like his days are done in Houston, at least in terms of playing out there on the floor. Moving on, though, we did have a little bit of business here. The Denver Nuggets reach an extension with Aaron Gordon. And Aaron Gordon traded with, well, Keith, your hometown Orlando Magic. They were able to bring him in last season, gave up a decent amount in order to get him. And he was a nice fit for them. In fact, when Aaron Gordon came on board, Denver was looking like a really tough out in the playoffs. They
Mm-hmm.
were playing some incredible basketball. And then unfortunately, Jamal Murray got hurt. But they do lock up Aaron Gordon 4 years, 92-ish million. And I said ish. Keith's going to get into that in just a second. But 4 year deal for Aaron Gordon, and I think that's a nice fit for the Nuggets moving forward.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Now it's really more like 87 million
Yeah.
and then about 5 million in bonus money, which is becoming a very common thing that we're seeing in these extensions. So it's about the max that the Nuggets could give him in an extension right now, because you're limited in how much you can give a guy. And Gordon was at 16.4 million this year. So if we remember, he came in on that contract that was a declining contract
Mhm.
previous, the one he signed with the Magic, and he's probably outplayed it a little bit. That
Yeah.
that number feels a little big to me. I think about 20 million average annual value was what I had pegged for Gordon, because you've already got Jokic. So, in reminder, this kicks in next season. This is not this year. So next year, when this kicks in, you'll have him at about 20-ish million. You'll have Jokic at 33.6, Jamal Murray at 31.6, and I'm going to guess Michael Porter Jr. is going to be on the full max right around 29.7. And then you've got Will Barton at 14.4 and Monte Morris at 9.1. That is an extremely expensive team.
Yeah.
Now, you've got your top five and your sixth man locked up. So you're not in a bad spot necessarily if you're the Nuggets. But yeah, it's, if you believe in what happened after they traded for Gordon, when Murray was still healthy in that stretch, you can see why they did this, because Denver looked like they might have been a title contender. If you are a little more skeptical on Aaron Gordon, then you start to think, boy, that's an awful lot of money to lock up for him. But I guess if you're Denver, you're looking at it as, look, we don't want to run the risk of losing this guy. I'm not exactly sure who the suitors would have been this offseason. It's not a great summer for cap space teams,
Mhm.
not a great summer to be a free agent, but you'd rather not mess around. If you could get the guy locked in at what you feel is a pretty fair number, get it done and keep this thing moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't that far off from like say what Lonzo Ball got or something. So
Sure.
I'm totally fine with Aaron Gordon getting this number because, like you said, I think he does bring a piece that can take the Nuggets to another level. And if you buy into what they did right before Jamal Murray got hurt, they looked like the team that was going to come out of the Western Conference. Now, again,
Yeah.
there is that big qualifier there that we don't know for sure that that was going to be sustainable or not. Denver clearly thinks that it was, but you also have the reigning MVP, right? And so you've got to do everything you can to maximize that window to win right now. And you
Yep.
can say, look, even the MVP, right? Injury probably impacted that. Jokic is probably not the MVP if everybody stayed healthy around the NBA. But the reality is that he
Sure.
got it. And he's certainly, at the very least, he's one of the top talents in the NBA. And so when you've got a player like that, you've got to make sure that you do everything you can to maximize that and maximize your chance to win a championship. So I know this is going to get expensive, but I think Denver's got to feel pretty confident. They are one of a handful of teams that have to be looking around saying, you know what? If not for injury, we'd be the ones hoisting the championship trophy, or at least we had a pretty good shot at it. And let's see what we can do moving forward. So I think it's a fine deal for the Denver Nuggets. And I think Aaron Gordon, it's a nice fit for him basketball wise. I think it just makes sense on both ends of the floor. So, as much as the Nuggets might be a roadblock for my Los Angeles Lakers, and I think that could be an issue moving forward in the West, they're going to be a power. I think it's a nice move for them.
Yeah, I agree. And I say this meaning to take it with a pretty, for what I'm saying it for. No one shuts down LeBron James, but Aaron Gordon
No.
has been one of the guys who's had some success against LeBron because he's big, he's quick, he's fairly strong, so he can actually match with LeBron a little bit better. So, and I'm not saying he's going to shut him down and hold him to nothing, but if you're looking over the next few years, you got to get through LeBron, you got to get through Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and these big wings. You need to have a big wing that can defend them. And that's what Aaron Gordon is for the Nuggets. Plus, you can also move him into playing more of a pure four, which
Mhm.
again, against a team like the Lakers, he can defend AD if you need him to do that, if they would go in another direction defensively and those kind of things. So I think all around, this is a move that makes sense. It's just a lot of money, and you start to
Yeah.
wonder if they don't win a championship in the next couple of years, because then Jokic is only after, they'll all be together for this 1 year. And then after that, Jokic is going to be, we know, is going to be on the top tier max contract. That's definitely going to happen. That extension will probably get done as soon as it's able to as well. So what we're going to ultimately see here is, if you don't win, someone's got to go at that point? And
Hmm.
was that going to be? And of course, we hope for the best, but we don't know what Jamal Murray's going to be when he gets back. Has that injury changed his game at all? Well, what does that mean? I tend to think he'll be fine. He was never a guy who was, overly reliant on being fast or, super quick or, a
Hmm.
major high leaper or anything. But sometimes those guys are hurt more if they lose a little bit of what they had. But he's young enough. My guess is he'll have a full recovery and he'll be fine. So I think this team is pretty good. I just feel like it's awfully expensive to commit to this group Nets type of money when you may not get Nets type of results or feel pretty good. But I say that knowing the Nets didn't even make it out of the second round last year because of injuries, and we never know what's going to happen.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, look, if they wind up going on to win a championship, this is totally worth it. If
Yep.
they
Yeah.
don't, then maybe they'll look back and regret it. But I'm usually in favor of teams. If you've got the opportunity, you swing for the fences. You go for it. And
Sure.
I think that's
I'm
what
with you.
that's what the Nuggets are doing right here.
Yep.
Anything else that we need to get into today? I think that was about it in terms of major news
Major
around the
NBA
NBA.
news. The G
Yeah.
League broke what their schedule is going to look like this year. They're going to start out playing a tournament style
Mhm.
format with some pod play early. That's I think going to reduce the travel and keep things a little cleaner on that end for them. And that's where the G League Ignite will take part in, and then they'll go into their annual what had been the G League Showcase, their pre-Christmas tournament. They'll finish up just before Christmas with the G League Showcase, and that will be the extent of the Ignite's competitive schedule. Then they will play exhibitions after that. The
Mhm.
Ignite, if anybody doesn't know, that's the team that's made up of players straight out of high school, as well as a handful of veteran basketball players, usually guys who have been in the NBA for a number of years with them. So that's what they'll play, and then everybody else will play a full schedule after the tournament portion is played, and they will get into going into their traditional playoffs and championship and all that stuff at the end of their year. So they're staying in the same calendar where they'll start about 3 weeks after the NBA starts, and they'll end in early to mid-April, before the around. I guess it's mid-March
Mhm.
to late March. They'll end. I'm still off a year with my calendar. They'll end then and get back to their normal windows, and so players will be available at the very beginning of the season, to be available at the tail end of the season, and those kind of things with that. And then the NBA, couple minor things came out about different virus testing, and that
Oh
you
yeah.
follow all the major news breakers for that. Nothing groundbreaking, except we still don't know the exact ramifications, because players are not going to be required to get vaccinated, is the latest. So we don't know what that means for the New York and San Francisco markets fully, because everybody going into those buildings, as of local regulations and laws, which yes, those trump the NBA right now, unless they get some kind of special exemption.
Yeah.
You can't be in there unless you're vaccinated. So we don't know what that means for Knicks, Nets, and Warriors players to this point. So we'll see what that looks like as this all evolves over the next really only about 3 weeks or so before preseason games get started.
Yeah, well, they're gonna have to figure that out quick because, like you said,
Yeah.
preseason starting up in just a few weeks. So we'll see how that all goes down. It's going to be a fluid situation, but unfortunately, something that we're going to have to deal with
Yeah.
all season long. It looks like.
Yep. Yeah, probably. Yeah. And that's just, we're not offering any commentary on should you or shouldn't you get
Yeah.
vaccinated. But that's just what the situation is. That's what those laws are there. You can scream from the hilltops if you want in the comments about whether that's fair or unfair, but it is what it is. And that's where the teams are at. They had already informed the league and players association had already worked with teams and players to basically say, hey, here's what it's going to be in these markets. And we'll see if that changes in any other markets too, because this is something that's changing, feels like on a daily basis around the country on what the different regulations and protocols are in different major cities and states and those kind of things.
Right. Right. So it'll be another thing to navigate during the course of this NBA season. But everybody, thank you guys for watching today's show. Let us know in the comments section what you think about John Wall, what you think about what's going on with Aaron Gordon's new contract, that extension that he got. Give us your thoughts in the comment section. Again, don't forget, subscribe. We are pushing that subscriber base up as much as we possibly can for the season to start. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well. And we'd appreciate it if you would like this video. Till
Let me
next
say
time,
one
everybody.
thing before we
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, do it.
2 weeks from today, training camp's open. 5 weeks from
Yes.
today, first game of
Yes.
the season
Let's
starts.
go.
First game of the regular season, it is. And I started getting media day information sent to me today.
Oh,
So we are
fancy.
getting there. This is coming fast and furious with that. So yeah. And yeah, in the comments, let us know if you can find a John Wall trade that you really like,
Yeah.
because I know we're struggling. But make sure it works. It can't be John Wall for somebody's minimum salary guy just because you want to put him on your favorite team. That
Right.
doesn't work. If you want to see him Dougie, you're gonna have to figure out another way.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That means no John Wall for Malik Monk trades or anything like that, please. That does
Correct.
not work. But appreciate everybody joining us. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.